I wanted to make another video on the Philadelphia style because I think the first one dealt a lot with the tip, but it didn't incorporate the rest of the reed very well. This one hopefully will clarify a few things. Now generally, the gouge is going to be a little stronger for this style reed. Almost like a Cleveland gouge, but the tip is the difference with this reed. And hopefully I can show you what I mean by that. This reed is influenced by several players from that school, Delancey students actually, from the early 70s. And there were a few of them that, one in particular, but several that were in school together that kind of, I think, came up with this reed, which is unlike their teacher's reed, in my view at least. And that's pretty close. In a previous video I made a very thin tip, but this one's not going to be as thin, and it's going to incorporate the blend region as part of the tip. So this depends a lot on your gouge. Like I said earlier, it does kind of need a stronger gouge. There we have it, the beginnings. And it's sort of like, as one player described it, the beginnings of a French reed, essentially. It has a nice profile to it that incorporates a bit of the blend region. Just making a little noise. Peep. This gouge is actually from my single radius, which is in some ways a little stronger than the double, but doesn't have the tonal qualities of the double. And with this reed, we're going to address the front third or half of the reed before we get to the back. Try to make it smooth. I know sometimes it's not easy, but it does help. For me, the profile is key for this reed. Not so much looking at it like that. Make sure we soak it. I'd like to get it so that it has a lot of rattle. What I will do is, in order to help that, I'll scrape a little bit through the blend. And I think this is the difference. Is that this reed is based mostly on a long blended tip, the blend region having a little more to say at the beginning stages. Eventually you will define it, but we're not defining it yet. We want it to vibrate. So let's hear what that sounds like. So now you hear the rattle, right? That's kind of a nice low rattle. And that was the purpose of scraping through the blend region. You see there's not a lot of definition here. Not yet. And we're just going to clean this up a little bit So it looks a little more presentable, I suppose. But we're not really defining it. We've got the rattle, which you hear that low rattle we got. And that was because of the blend scraping through it. And so now we have a nice vibrating beginning reed with a good profile. The tip is evident and blended. So we get a lot of rattle. We are going to clip this reed until we get it around a C. That's pretty close to a C. See what we have. About a 71, and it's clip crowing almost a C. So now what we're going to do, before we take anything out of the back, is we're going to define the tip. So you want to measure this to find out where it's going to be. And we're pretty close to that. And the definition is going to be with a sharp knife. It's really the only way you can do it. And for me, this is the difference between the Cleveland reed and the Philadelphia reed from the 70s, is that both uses a strong gouge, but the Philadelphia style, to me, deals with a long, vibrating tip with a lot of rattle, and then adds definition, whereas for me the Cleveland reed has the definition from the beginning of the reed, the scrape definition as you scrape the reed. And this cane is very hard to work with. So we're going to try to give it some definition. And then we will clip it. Focus. As far as finishing the tip, we're going to do that later. We're just putting definition into the tip. You can see there's a little more definition there, right? And we put the definition in the blended region, but we still have a nice sloping tip. And we've only used half of the reed to get it this far. The reed's about 71.5 long, and now we'll clip it a little bit more. I can't do this in the middle of the desk. Sorry, I can't clip in the middle of the desk. It's just too awkward. Now that we have that, we're going to scrape the back now. Now, I had a reed lesson once with a very prominent person from this school of reed making, and he said to me that he liked it when the scrape in the back at the catch made a certain kind of noise. And when he heard the knife doing that, he was like, "That's what I want to hear." And it's kind of, you know, you're kind of stopping the scrape, but you're also scraping through there. That sound. You hear that? That's the sound you want to hear when you're scraping behind the heart. When I did that, he was like, "That's what I want to hear." That gives you a catch region, but also in a sense you're scraping through it, so it's not a complete stop. You're scraping through, up and away through it, into it, and then up out of it, like that. And you can see the scraping marks that gives you. So now that we've done that, you can kind of see it from the back, and it is definitely a prominent part of the reed. And there's a book out there that talks about this reed, and excellent book by a really extraordinary reed maker. And this is pretty much how it's done. And yes, I did study the reed making with him. Okay, so I think what we can see is the beginnings of the back of the reed. This dramatically changes the reed quite a bit. My scraping's a bit sloppy, but nonetheless it'll give you an idea of how this should go, this style reed. And now we'll clip it. That's a little flat. So, you know, that's a pretty decent sounding reed. It's a little flabby, you know, and so we still have a length of a tip there. We can adjust that. But the primary function of the reed is been established. We're just going to refine the tip. But first, before we do that, we clip it till it crows a C. Here we go. And use a tuner. That helps sometimes. Because that's a B. I want to get it up to a C. That's nice. So it's a little tippy. Because the gouge is a little stronger, we're going to start further back in the tip to refine this. But the function of the reed is all there. If you have a strong enough gouge, you can make your reeds like this, and it is really a great way to make a reed. And unfortunately, I never made my reed like this in my career. I tended to make Cleveland style reeds, and I had a lot of trouble with that because without knowing, my gouge was just far too weak for that style reed. But if you have a strong enough gouge, you can make reeds like this, and they're really sensational reeds. You know, you can make these till the cows come home, and they're all going to work for you. And of course, that's the primary goal, is have the reed work when you need it to. So I'm just doing a little refining of the tip. Not much. Just a little on the sides, just to tone it down a bit. Let's try that. That's a very pretty reed. And it crows a C. A little flat, but it crows a C. It's a nice crow. So keep that in mind. This worked with my Laban oboe, which is really nice. And that's the beauty of the Philadelphia style reed, is that it'll work with just about any oboe. It works really well with Laban oboes. But notice how, the emphasis with this reed is to have a long tip at the beginning that's blended. And if you don't get the rattle that I got earlier, you need to scrape through the blend region, right, from the heart through the tip to get that. And this is without removing anything from the back. So this is a wonderful reed to make, and it's based off of a book and lessons I had with the author of the book, who was from Philadelphia. And many of that generation made reeds like this. Extraordinary players, really, and great reed makers. If you give it a shot, I think you will be very successful with a style reed. Good luck with that.